one of the first deacons. They were deacons and trustees then, not just councilmen. And he was one of the first deacons. They were deacons and trustees then, not just councilmen. And he was one of the first and became close friends with Reverend Tilburg, who did a lot of the shopping himself. And he was involved in a lot of things at the church. My grandfather. This was, well then by the time the youngest was born, 1910, my dad's youngest sister, Trinity was still in its infancy then. But all the kids were confirmed there. They had visiting, before Tilburg came here, they had like visiting professors would come from Augustana College and teach confirmation. My dad was in the second confirmation class, I know that. And my uncle and aunt, they were in the first confirmation class at Trinity. And all of those, well, yeah, my dad, he remembered it very well. My dad was a great anecdotal storyteller. And I'm sorry about the sunlight there.
Do you remember any of the stories?
Pardon?
Do you remember any of those stories?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, what was a professor from Augustana? Oh.
Were they professors or seminarians?
Nothstein, Reverend Nothstein.
So they were professors, not seminarians.
No, they were professors at the college, and Reverend Nothstein was their confirmation teacher. And in later years, probably the 1950s or so, my dad went over to Reverend Nothstein's office and reintroduced himself, and they had a nice visit, I know. And so my folks, were always very interested in church, and saw to it that all of us kids were confirmed in our order as we came along in Sunday school. And my dad's brother and others were involved too in the first Sunday school that Trinity had. And so it was sparse, and that you probably heard about that picture of the building, the old church in our present church basement, where all those people are there. Okay, when you come in, from where we would come in from the choir to the basement, there's a door down there by the restrooms, and there's the handicap restroom. But my parents are in that picture, and Reverend Tilburg and my grandfather and grandmother were in that picture. And there's only one person alive who was in that picture, and it's Eileen Day, who was in the choir, and she was a babe in arms. And that was taken, I believe, 1924.
Is it hanging on the wall?
Yes, hanging on the wall, right by the piano.
Oh, I know which one you mean.
Okay, right by the piano.
I'll have to get a picture of that. That would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be nice to put. Mark Eileen's.
Yeah,
picture.
right. Eileen is a babe in arms. I think she's in the front row, and her parents were in the first church choir. Pop and Velma Anderson, and my mom remembered them real well too. I mean, the choir was only about 6 or 8 people, and but my grandfather was, rather community oriented. I mean, my dad was an alderman. I'm not sure if my grandfather was or not, but anyhow, to bring a better tone to Trinity, put it that way. Because from the beginning, Trinity was known as, in later years, they got the nickname of the Country Club Church. Did you ever hear that term?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, they were a country club church. All the Deere and Company people there. And somebody mentioned, you go to that country club church. Well, I said, aren't country club people allowed to go to church? I mean, no, we're not. We probably are. Got far more attorneys and professors and teachers and doctors, which we do, always did. And
so it's been like that ever since the beginning.
It really has. It really has. There were
know that.
several doctors in the early, and attorneys, Lloyd Schriebert and others, and Lloyd Schreibert's son is now mayor of Rock Island. And my dad was a businessman. He was a meat cutter, actually, had his own business. And my grandfather was a grocer. But they always stayed very much, like I say, community things. Never, heaven forbid, they weren't country club people. But Trinity, and you could put that down if you like. Trinity was known and still is in some areas, although we've lost people. But as you go to that country club church. Mm-hmm. Well, sure, country club people need a church, and but I remember my dad. Then, if someone had been on the church council long enough, he was just an honorary deacon.
Did they have deacons and elders both?
Pardon?
Did they have elders too?
No.
Just deacons.
Trustees.
Oh, trustees and deacons.
Trustees and deacons.
And then when did it become just council members? Was that with the LCA or was that with the ELCA that changed?
It became in the 1950s. Mm-hmm. I was on the council twice. My dad was, and my younger brother Randy was, when it just became the council.
In the 50s.
And Agnes Teskey was the first lady.
Oh, really?
Elected to the council.
In the 50s also?
50s, early. See, Reverend Tilbrook was there to 1958. Mm-hmm. 43 years, as you probably recall.
That's right.
And he was, I don't know, he was very economical. I think his highest salary, even allowing for those times, was about $7,000 a year. And he owned his own home, which is still just about 3 blocks down from the church. And he didn't have a secretary. There was no youth director until the last few years before Tilly retired. There was a secretary then. Otherwise, Mrs. Tilbrook was sort of youth director, church secretary, sometimes organist, and things were just kind of kept that way, and it seemed to work. And Tilly, they started going to 2 services in the 1950s. Like I said, I started, I'm sure it was 1947. And it was just, the service was 9:30 to 10:30. Well, no, before that, the service was at 10:45. So Reverend Tilbrook could be home by noon to listen to the news. Because they just lived a few blocks away.
And when it was just one service, it was at 10:45?
10:45, yeah. Sunday school, 9:30 to 10:30. Church at 10:45.
And so when did they start 2 services? In the 50s?
I'm sure it's probably after Reverend Tilbrook left. We had, of course, some interim pastors, and then Reverend Eric Gustafson came. And I think when he came there, it was, they probably started 2 services, 9:30 and 11. And the choir sang optional both services. I sang both services for years and years and years and years, because I also taught Sunday school at first, but then with Nancy Johnson, who was there before Steve Steele, it was optional. If we wanted to sing 2 services, fine. But I'd say by the early 1960s, it was definitely very entrenched into having 2 services. And another thing a lot of people don't know about Trinity is they used to have a big, like churches do, a big bazaar, ladies' bazaar in the fall. Well, when we became Lutheran Church of America, ELCA, Dick Dahlman didn't believe in that. He thought all the church money that was earned or came in for things should be from the people, not from bazaars and chili suppers and things of that nature. So he put a stop to all that. It hurt a lot of women. A lot of people were very angered or upset by that. Crap. With Reverend Tilbrook there for the 43 years, the church grew and people were attracted to Trinity. Somehow, Tilly was kind of a sober man, but he had a nice dry sense of humor. And they were a marvelous team, he and Mrs. Tilbrook. And so the church continued to grow, and it far outpaced nearby churches like Salem And Trinity was the founder of Calvary Lutheran, the Mother Church of Calvary Lutheran, and of Faith Lutheran. And I remember the choir sang at the dedication of Faith Lutheran. I can remember the song the choir sang, "How lovely are the messengers that preach ye the gospel of Christ." And that was in May, I think, of 48, so I'd started the choir that fall of 47. But anyhow, Trinity did this thing. Tilburg had a way. He would go to Mrs. Butterworth, who was Deere and Company over here, and he knew him pretty personally, and she'd say, "Well, Tilly, whatever you can raise from your congregation, I'll match." And that's how Faith Lutheran got started. And Calvary out 23rd Avenue, Moline.
Where did they go?
What?
What were they? Were they Methodist or something? Or First Congo people? Where did they go? The Deere people, the Butterworths.
Oh, yeah, First Congo, and Trinity. Yeah, First Congregation was, real big Deere and Company. And I don't know, we had, like I say, a lot of the doctors and professors and some attorneys, big on attorneys and dentists and professional people. And somehow Calvary, are you familiar with Calvary at all?
Yeah, I've been there.
They were always sort of known as, and the later minister didn't like it, sort of as not blue collar, but sort of evangelical. I mean, just, praise the Lord. Church, which, like I say, we founded. And at that time, Calvary was way out, 23rd Avenue, which seemed, quite a ways out in the far eastern end of Moline. And then Faith, which we founded, or was a mother church too, was way out there on 41st Street. And the people there have been very dedicated to that church, and it keeps growing too. It's a great... Where were you before you came to Trinity?
Well, we came to Trinity when we first moved here.
Okay.
And we moved back, and then we stayed for like 15 years, and we went to First and Rock Island.
Mm-hmm. All right, so, but anyhow, those are a few things about Tilburg. He was he was homey, folksy. He wasn't aloof. He used to tell my dad's stories. Tilburg belonged to Short Hills, I believe. And, he'd go swimming there and golfing, and, he'd tell stories, about the swimming pool, the young kids jumping in, and they, just halfway ruin things for the older people. And I think membership at Short Hills was a gift from the church. And they did that for a number of years if a pastor wanted it.
Oh, really?
Church.
So it was the country club church.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, literally.
If the pastor gets a membership in the country club.
And but Tilburg, who was always known as 20-Minute Tilly. And,
I heard that many times.
Yeah, I know, yeah, and 20-Minute Tilly. And
that would be long for a sermon today.
yeah.
My daughter-in-law prides herself on 7 minutes, I think it is.
Yeah, well, I've always said working for the funeral home and sitting in on a lot of funerals, and in the summers I sing for many other churches. I most ministers, everything they've got to say, they can say in 10 minutes, most of them, and except Baptists. But anyhow, Tilburg, he started really bringing people in. And in fact, in the first choir, there was Dr. Freeland and the Andersons, Bess Klingaville, I believe. And in those days, the pulpit was on the left side of the church, where, as you face the altar, on the left side instead of on the right side. Now, it was there for many, many years. And
Because the choir loft was on the right.
And the choir loft was on the right, yeah.
Because I remember that.
Yeah, okay, sure. Okay.
Well, when I used to go there when I was in college.
Uh-huh.
I wasn't a member, but we would go sometimes. To
Okay, and I was the first person, too, that chanted from the altar. Till holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. And I remember Tilburg said from the altar, he said, well, thank you, Giles, and so on. He says, I don't know if I'm allowed to do this or not, lay people, but he said, that's the least of my worries. And so I continued to do the cantering for 3 or 4 years. It was near the end of Tilburg's tenure, anyhow.
It was the liturgy part.
Liturgy part, yeah.
And lay people didn't do that then.
No.
Oh.
Holy, holy, holy. Yeah, Tilburg would just holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts.
So
And
he just read it.
yeah, and so then when I started doing it, that was
That must have been the Black Book. I didn't know the Black Book.
the
I
Black
came
Book.
in
Yeah,
on the Red
right.
Book.
Yeah, okay, sure. The old black hymnal.
I didn't grow up in the Lutheran.
And of course, in those, for a number of years, we did get seminarians at Trinity to assist in the services. And Trinity had 4 of our members became pastors. 4 that I know of for sure. Herb Karl Mark, Donald Johnson, Jack Freed. And those were all in the 1950s. And then a long gap, and now another young man, I can't think of his name offhand. But,
There's been Ben Ingleson recently.
yeah, that's right,
And
Ben
you
Ingleson.
And you ought to count my son because he grew up in this church.
Oh, yeah.
Eric Alm.
Yeah. But
He's now a chaplain. But
the Luther League met on Sunday nights, and the church ladies would alternate. We had supper there. It might be maid rights, it might be chili, it might be just hot dogs and, potato chips or something. But, and Mrs. Tilburg was the youth leader. Young people, she would say, because we'd gather and, then it was time to eat. Then we'd have our meetings, a little speaker and something
This was Luther League?
Luther
You
League.
were in it?
Yeah.
Yes, it was Luther League when I belonged to it.
Okay, sure.
When I was in high school.
And
I wasn't Lutheran yet, but I went to a Lutheran.
I was very active. I mean, I was president of Luther League here in what was known as the Rock Island District Luther League. And so we would get people, but that was Sunday nights. We'd meet at 6 o'clock. And, the mothers, my mom and other women from the various divisions would, serve suppers and had.
What were the divisions?
Well, they were like the circle, like the Anna
Like
unit
circles.
now. Yeah, right.
Now they're units.
Yeah,
I guess,
yeah.
but
Now they're units.
There used to be circles before then they were divisions.
Mhm.
Okay, I never heard of them called
Yeah, there
divisions.
were the Sunshine Division, the Ever Ready, and different names like that.
Did you have a ladies' missionary society?
I think they all kind of contributed to that, but there wasn't a name like that as such that I can ever recall.
I'm just thinking back to First and some of their history from the 30s. There was a
Uh-huh.
large women's missionary society.
I don't think so, but I just think like my aunt was in Ever Ready, and one of their projects was making quilts, and another unit or division would I don't know what would they make, diapers or something, or for overseas.
Layettes, probably.
Layettes, yeah, okay.
They still call
And
them layettes.
my mother was in one of the later formed ones, which is called Division 6. And I don't know what they did to raise money, but or make things. But awful lot of activity. And another thing that's really forgotten now, every year there was a father and son banquet.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, really very crowded, well attended. And of course, they don't call them mother and daughter banquets anymore, do they? Because a lot of women don't have children or may not have married to have daughters. But anyhow.
Yeah, I never liked it because I had 2 sons. And I never felt like I could go. And they said, well, you
And,
can still come.
right.
You're somebody's daughter.
Yeah.
But I never liked that.
So, I mean, those things are really active. And as in youth and Luther League, we served those things.
Who's you?
The Luther League.
Oh, Luther League. Was
Yeah,
serving.
we would serve the tables.
Uh-huh.
And, I just did everything. I taught Sunday school. And I did...
In high school? When you were in high school? When you were part of Luther League, did you teach?
Yeah, Luther League, and then high school teaching Sunday school before we went to 2 services. Mm-hmm. And then the choir started singing at 9:30, and I was getting tired of teaching Sunday school by then. But then after I'd been in the Army and finished Augustana, I was very active in working with the Luther League again, the teenagers, of course. Mm-hmm. And by then we had a seminarian or 2 as youth directors. Mm-hmm. But I did everything I could to help, and we'd take little Sunday trips to Lake Story or to Makokota Caves or something like that. And it was just a pleasure to do all these things.
You don't remember what the church cost when they first built it, do you? That's before your time, I know, but
Yeah, no, I don't.
I suppose we have records that tell that.
Yeah. And I've got another booklet. It was kind of a directory from the 1960s, and I was going to try and find it today, but I'll give it to you. I mean, all the division, I mean, my gosh, I mean, listen, practically everybody was a member of the church. You know, just a huge numbers of people. And
What was the largest? Was it during Dahlman's era?
Dahlman's time when, oh golly,
like
the
1200?
average attendance was 800 a Sunday.
Yeah, wasn't the membership about 1,200 at that time?
Well, there, of course, as you know, there are two things. I mean, there's baptized members and the
members.
confirmed members.
Right.
Now, we were over 2,000
Oh, was it that big?
of baptized members and about 1,400 confirmed members. And then Pastor Eskrit was popular, but those numbers went down just a little bit to 650 a Sunday or 700 a Sunday. And then when the destroyer came,
This is on tape.
I didn't say any names. You know, it started going down to fewer than 300 a Sunday,
That's
brick
too
by
bad.
brick, I swear, you know.
You had some choir stories to tell me, you said.
Um,
Make sure we get them in here before I don't want to run out. We have plenty of time.
okay, well, the fun thing about the choir, what most of us remember, is the processionals.
Yeah.
Yeah, the processional. We would line up in the back of the church, and I mean, it was so cadenced. You know, holy, holy. Remind me of cattle, you know. And of course, Mrs. Skoglund, she was the alpha singer. We marched down in pairs, and Skogie was always the alpha one. I would say she went down the aisle on the right, and I don't know who was. But anyhow, women first, and the sopranos, and then the altos, and the tenors, I guess, and the basses. And we were lined up so that we would just go into the choir loft at the front where the pulpit is now, all in the right order. And some people think that we always sang holy, holy, holy. No, not true. I mean, for instance, during Epiphany, as with gladness men of old, and Lent we sang,
But always cadenced.
when I survey the wondrous cross, you know, and what we do during Lent or Advent, and for also, Jesus shall reign where'er the sun, you know, and everybody.
And you wore robes then, right?
Oh yes, and then Mrs. Skoglund and some others finally made stoles for her. They're beautiful each season, green, lavender, red, and white stoles. And they were all consecrated, you know, and so that was really nice for our black robes. They really looked nice. And then after we retired the black robes, the choir went to a white surplice and then the black, kind of a fitted robe. I mean, they weren't loose, they were sort of fitted. And that was for a few years in the 60s. And then we went to the beautiful white robes, like, almost like a monk might wear. Beautiful, beautiful white, like a monk's cloth or something. I mean, it was not a smooth material. And then from then, the white robes to the blue robes, which became infamous. The choir became known sarcastically to the other people, the contemporary people. Oh, the blue robes, they get everything. You know, the blue robes, you know, they get this. They think they're better, and oh, jeez.
Well, who was saying this? The congregation?
No, people in that other.
In other
I know
churches?
who some of them were, are, but.
In other churches were saying?
No, the
But-
contemporary choir music.
Oh, the contemporary singers.
Yeah, the
did
11
not
o'clock
like
people.
They didn't like the.
No,
blue
they thought
robes.
we were the pampered pets. We were the the golden people, you know.
But they didn't wear robes at all, did they?
No, and we were the blue robes, you know, and but
Were they just upset that you got robes? That you got new robes? Would they have preferred that you just keep the old robes, or
when what?
would they have preferred that you just keep the old robes?
I don't know what, but they were just kind of
Because
jealous.
robes are expensive. Maybe they thought you
Yeah.
should have bought more
Oh,
music with the money.
Those
instead of
last
buying
blue
more.
robes were very expensive.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But also with the choir, we had so many rehearsal places. My gosh, when I started down there, we rehearsed in a lounge in the church basement. Of course, everything is different. It was like the Luther League room or just a meeting room, and it had sofas and then we met in the church basement, the kind of the Sunday school room. And then, oh gosh, I think it was after that, then we started having our rehearsals in the choir loft right at the front of the church. And then from there, we rehearsed there until the new organ was put in 1973. Then we rehearsed in the balcony for a number of years in the balcony. And then we rehearsed down the hall from the office. Not the council room, but down that hall down there. And then we rehearsed in the chapel, the little chapel, and then as you recall, then the Mazes had us rehearse in that upstairs room, and then now back to the chapel. Oh, and there might have been a room or two that I've forgotten about choir music, but Frederick Swanson, who was a founder of the Moline Boys Choir, and also a lot of music guild founding. Loved the dramatic numbers, you know, like we always open in the fall with a song called Now Let the Full Tone Chorus Sing Forth His Hymn of Praises, and sometimes when we do Guno Sanctus, Holy, Holy, oh, we'd have violins and some of the boys' choir. Oh my gosh, what a production number Frederick Swanson was able to bring out in us. And Fred was there from 44 to 58.
How many people would have been in the choir at that time?
Oh, I suppose 35, you know.
Really?
Yeah.
They filled up both sides then, probably.
So yeah, he was with the Moline School, so he was able to recruit some kids that probably didn't have churches or something. And of course, you know, we were still down in the main church level then. But in the choir, I had told the Mays, Dan and so on, you know, we would do a lot of social things. Once a year we would have anthem mending night. You know, you get all those anthems that are really just falling apart, and there was a special tape you could buy from, you know, bookbinder places or something. And we'd have sort of a social, and each table would be given a bunch of anthems, old anthems, and we'd be patching them up and taping them up and doing this, and then...
You could do that again.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we had one last fall that was just literally falling apart. I could hardly hold on to it.
I know.
And,
I had one of those too.
Yeah, and Steve was a great party thrower. Steve Steele. He liked to throw little social parties, and of course it was very sad the way his career at Trinity ended, you know, just with, I don't know if any of us will ever truly know the whole story or not, but I really don't think his being gay had anything to do with, you know, his leaving, but it was a thing over salary, and, you know, the medical,
You mean the healthcare?
Yeah,
insurance?
healthcare
Insurance?
issue included in his salary, which...
Was he considered full-time? He wasn't, was he?
No, but he made a lot of money there. I don't know if he made over $40,000 or something there.
He must have been considered full enough time that they gave him insurance.
Yeah, but he never had, as far as I know, he didn't have any benefits.
Oh, he didn't have insurance then?
I don't think so.
So he wanted insurance, probably.
Yeah, he wanted it, and of course his companion worked for Deere and Company, and he had them, but since they, were just two guys, I mean, Steve couldn't benefit from that at all. But we had a series between Frederick Swanson when there were, about 4, possibly even 5 choir directors that just stayed maybe a year until a fellow named Gene Blick came along. And he was there for much of the 1960s.
Gene Blick, was that the guy who had the art store?
No relation that I know.
Oh, it was a store in Galesburg, I think.
Yeah, there's
Blick's.
Blick's, yeah, art supplies.
Yeah,
No, he was a Rock Island school principal, but he was musical.
Oh.
And we had a fellow named Doug Dixon who was just about a year. And a fellow named Mr. Prindle.
This was all before Steve Seeley? Just before Steve?
All before what?
Before Steve Seeley came?
Yes,
Just before, so like the 60s?
Oh, Nancy Johnson was there 10 years before Steve
she was
Steele
a-
came.
Oh, that one.
But Mr. Prindle wore a tuxedo on Sundays. And oh, wasn't he a dandy.
Oh, wow.
Oh, was he a dude. Oh, my, And then the church secretary, Helen Johnson, was our choir director for a while, but she wasn't. Her personality just didn't seem to get along well with a lot of people, so. And then Nancy Johnson came from 1975 to 1985. And then Steve came the same year I started at the funeral home, 85.
Yeah, Nancy left to go back to teach for a couple of years, I think, so she could get her.
Did she do that?
To get her,
Okay.
she wanted to get. I remember she wanted to get her retirement up. She's going
Okay.
to retire in a few years, and so
Yeah,
she needed.
and it was during this time that Dahlman's second year, I believe, I was on the council and the worship and music committee. And we started having worship services at Augustana in Centennial Hall on Reformation Sunday. And it never drew quite as many. We hoped to draw a lot of people from the college. But we had some great services, and the choir was big enough to process. And,
Those
we
were
had,
impressive. We were new members then.
yeah,
I
oh, yeah.
remember them.
And, but then it became too expensive, and after Dahlman left, contributions we had our budget about close to $500,000 at one time.
Really.
But it became just a little bit too tight on the budget. Art Milton and Karen Dowsett and myself and others were on this committee every year. But it became just harder and harder to do, to pay Centennial Hall, and not drawing quite as many non-members as they had anticipated.
Well, then along came the thing at the Mark too, didn't it? I'm not sure how long you continued doing it. At
That
Augustana, but-
was kind of like just a 1 or 2 time thing as far
Yeah,
as
but I
I.
remember the ones, meeting at the river one was a big
Yeah,
one with
mhm.
all the Lutheran churches gathering
Yeah,
down there.
right from both sides of the
And I-
river here in the Quad Cities.
I don't know if you did the things at Augustana up to that point or if you'd stopped long before then or not. But
We were at the Centennial Hall through about probably 88, maybe through Steve Steely's 3rd or 4th year. 88, 89, we just finally had to stop it.
okay,
This was too expensive.
because the gathering at the river, wasn't that about 96 or so?
Yeah,
95,
probably,
96, and
yeah.
then they did another one about 5 years later.
Yeah. But the Centennial Hall was just a most impressive service, as you could
Oh,
imagine. We
I was there. We went
Yeah,
to several, went to
okay, of
several
course,
them.
yeah, of course.
I remember those, yeah.
And we had some nice soloists. The big Negro bass, Jim Parks, sang a couple of times, and then the wife of the the cantor at Temple Emmanuel, she sang. And so as the years went, Trinity has always been very strong on music. A very strong point there. And we had a great organ down front also. But it couldn't be worked on anymore. Finally, it was put in too small a space is what happened.
Oh, is that the one that's in the chapel?
Oh no. This was a big pipe organ. Right down
Where were the pipes?
Well, they offered them to anybody. I had one
Or
here.
where were they? But with the organ, I mean, were they behind the choir? When the choir
The
was
organ was the
I don't like
pipes. The pipes that were visible were just cosmetic.
But where were they visible? By the organ?
Yeah.
Or by the choir?
No.
I seem to remember the organ was down there by the choir loft.
Yeah.
But I don't
And
remember
the
where pipes were.
pipes, like I said, they were cosmetic, just for looks.
So where were the actual pipes then?
There was a little room. Well, it would just be about where the landing is, or where,
Okay, where the janitor's closet is now.
yeah, somewhere up there. The choir, I can just, see it all. And there was a very narrow passageway that the choir exited from. And then our robes were kept upstairs on the third floor. And but these pipes were, like I say, they were just strictly cosmetic, no purpose. And all the other pipes were inside a cabinet, a big cabinet, But the leather workings and stuff just sort of stopped. They couldn't work on it. It was too small a space. And by then, I was on the organ committee too. I just put everything musical down there.
Can you tell me anything about the organ that's upstairs? Is that's
Yeah,
some sort of it's a fancy organ, I know.
Cassavant Freres from Canada, from Quebec. And, Don Morrison was our organist and choir director at that time. And then we also enlisted the help of Tom.
What time was this? Give me a date.
I think it was first dedicated in maybe January of 73 or 74.
Okay.
I sang for the first funeral with the new organ.
Okay.
Bernie French's dad. And the Cassavant Freres, and it was really a very great rarity to have a tracker organ. I mean, we were the only one between here and Iowa City for a number of years on some of the Davenport churches. An organ similar to what Bach would have played on, the Baroque organ. And everything manual except the blower. That was electric. And Tom Robin Harris, they enlisted his help. It in some ways was sort of railroaded through. La Kiesel, or I don't know what her last name is now. You know La, yeah. And she and I were on that committee, and but we didn't have much say, because with Don Morrison from Augustana, who was our director and organist.
You would have held them back if you could have.
I don't know. I think we would have heard a few more. And for that time, like I say, 1973, 33 or so years ago, $100,000, which in today's money, that was...
It cost $100,000?
Yeah.
Wow.
And as far as I know, it was all paid for by the time it was installed.
Wow.
It was in January. And then, of course, another good story about church is the windows.
Okay.
The 6 windows up in the very front of the altar area of the church. That artist died. And so that's why the other windows don't quite match.
Oh, being 3 on each side?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and you look, they're very bluish.
Uh-huh.
And the others are more greenish. You look sometime, you can see the difference. That artist died, and so then the length of the church, those windows are from a different artist.
What can you tell me the story about the round window that's in the chapel?
Oh yeah, we all grew up with that Jesus in the temple, right straight above the altar, beautiful, and it was
above the altar. It wasn't in the center. I thought it was in the middle.
Well, the altar was just where it is now. But I mean, there was a wall there, and the round window was just in a space above, just right above the altar, high up.
The altar was never in the middle, was it?
Middle what?
Oh, the altar, not the. I'm thinking of the pulpit.
Yeah, no,
okay,
the altar.
above
No, the
yeah.
altar itself.
Yeah, that was in the right, and those big round
Yeah.
windows above it. And then they covered it up, didn't they? When they remodeled, was it in '78 or '79? That was at that remodeling they covered it up. Or that's
yeah.
or is that when they found it? I don't remember now.
Yeah, and then they installed it in the new chapel, of course,
But the new chapel didn't come till like the end of the 80s.
was that when that was put in? And
Sometime
that's
in the
when they,
80s.
and I don't know, I've asked too, that beautiful painting of Easter morning. It's a great big painting as big as a wall here.
Do you know who did the round?
I don't know who
chapel?
that artist was. That was before my time.
Yeah.
But Jesus and the,
But did they find it in '79, or is that when it got covered up?
oh gosh.
'Cause they
it was just-
remodeled. Because when we came in '78, and we weren't there more than a couple of months when they put the long white sheets across the front of the church. And I thought, here we just joined this church, and now we've got to look at this.
Yeah, I
awful-
remember when that
for
when
a
they had
year
this
almost. We got to look at this awful,
really enormously
drapes.
high
Yeah,
sheets there. And
but I don't remember before that. Was that picture there before those sheets went up?
yeah,
It was.
yeah,
So
and
that's
and
when
the
they put it
altar
up.
they had paintings on either side of the altar of the major prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel. And on the other side of the altar they had pictures of, paintings, just the faces of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And there's some there in some of the pictures yet, And then this big painting, it was Jesus and Mary Magdalene and the other Mary on Easter morning, the open tomb. And nobody seems to know where that is now. It was painted by Hugo Wiestedt, a Moline artist, and it was a huge painting. I mean, and that was always behind the pulpit, where the old pulpit was, on the south side. And it was a big picture with a kind of a rounded top, and you could see the crosses in the background. And it was early Easter morning, and Jesus and the Mary Magdalene and the other Mary. But I don't know, a lot of people didn't like that. Well, that's so passé, that's so, they don't do that anymore in churches. And I don't know if anybody knows where that, at one time it was in one of the Sunday school rooms. But I don't know. I have asked at times, and everyone I asked didn't seem to know.
If it's around, it'd be neat to unearth those things for the celebration, just to have them out for a short time.
And the old altar was, semicircle, and there was a beautiful hand-crocheted altar cloth. Just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Do you know who made that?
I think it was a church member. There may be more than
probably.
one. It had the, the symbolism, IHS and everything in it. And then when that no longer, fit the church decor, and they changed the altar. Then for a while, the altar for communion was all the way across the front of the church, a single bar. I don't know if you remember that or not. I mean, it had no curve to it or anything. It was
That's right.
just all the way across
Oh, I do remember that.
from north to south of the church. And I behind the pulpit in those days it was always called the study. Reverend Tober could sit there at a little table and desk before the service, and small weddings or intimate weddings or private baptism and stuff are conducted there. You know who the baptismal sculptor, or the figure is Saint Michael.
No. Who did that?
It was done probably in Italy.
Oh, really?
The Oakley family donated it to the church.
Well, it was sort of an original thing, wasn't it?
Oh yes, oh yes.
'Cause I remember when they remodeled the church, that stayed.
Yeah.
Well,
One time it didn't. At one time it didn't. They had kind of just a plain wooden, contemporary, kind of what I would call sort of Danish modern look.
Oh,
But
yeah.
then, and on the base of that statue of Saint Michael, it said in memory of J.B. Oakley for somebody. But that's it's not visible any longer.
Another piece of art is in the front entryway.
Yeah.
Was done by a guy from LeClaire. That piece for the 75th anniversary. It's a piece of the cross with the circle around it.
Oh, in the West Narthex.
Yeah, the West Narthex.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of its name. I don't know if anybody's mentioned him. Do you remember his name?
Who's what?
Mac. I'm trying to remember the guy's name.
I can't remember either, but that was dedicated when Pastor Olson was
It's for the 75th anniversary.
associate there. Yeah, Pastor Olson.
Yeah, and also, do you remember about In Touch starting in that?
Yeah, I know some Agnes Teskey and Mrs. Tilbert were very instrumental of starting that at Trinity. And
It didn't start though till Paul Olson started it though.
In Touch.
In Touch.
Okay.
Maybe the idea was a lot older than him. But,
Yeah.
But he was the one because that started while we were there.
Okay.
In the earlier years when we came.
But Dahlman, see there again, he didn't like that. He they had to get it. Well, it was they far outgrew
Oh yeah.
the facilities. And,
But I think it's pretty neat though that Trinity started it.
yeah.
And it started at Trinity.
I would sing there a few times, and you know they'd say, well, can you sing some oldies? And I thought they meant like Stardust or. No, they wanted the handkerchief oldies like In the Garden and you know.
You mean the Lutheran Church people sang In the Garden? Because there was a time when the Lutheran Church did not sing these I-type, me-type songs, and In the Garden is one of those. Like you say, the weepy type.
Yeah, no, I know.
Many of the emotional, touching me type
now we've
things,
got,
it was not Lutheran.
Shall We Gather at the River, and In the Garden is Mary Magdalene's story. Did you know that?
Well, I suppose, yeah.
I come to the garden alone, and I've got a book, the stories behind the hymns, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, and he walks with me, of course. And it was supposed to be the story of Mary Magdalene going to the garden.
I hadn't heard that.
A lot of things about Mary Magdalene in the last few years, in her relationship to Jesus,
Right.
But anyhow, Dahlman didn't want anything at Trinity that wasn't directly church related. Like I say, the child care thing, preschool, that had to go.
Well, when did it start? It hadn't started yet.
Oh gosh, I don't have a real.
That was after In Touch left because
Okay,
didn't
but yeah, the preschool was.
I think it was after we left. We would have left in about 92.
Yeah, Dahlman left Trinity in. Well, he was there for my dad's funeral in January of 1988. But when my Uncle Herb died, my dad's brother, in July of '88, Dahlman was gone.
Oh, he was.
Yeah.
He left fairly quickly.
What?
He left fairly quickly because
Yeah.
by that time it was sort of the norm for the church to bring in an interim.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like they had to fill it, fill his
Yeah.
spot immediately. So.
I was on the call committee for
Yeah.
Dahlman also.
Where,
I did just about everything that you could think of there.
where did you find him? Where was he before?
From Chicago suburbs. I think it's got a man's name in it. It's not St. Charles, but it's something. The western suburbs.
Not LaGrange.
No. Well, anyhow, four or five, myself, Jim Rebeck, and a couple others who aren't there anymore. We went up there. We went to the rear of the church, and he spotted us right away. He said, "I know, he said, why we were there because he didn't want to change churches,
Oh, really?
and he was just kind of drafted."
That sounds like an interesting story.
Yeah,
We're going
right.
to be talking about him in April. People will come with Dahlman stories, but as long as I've got you on here and I've got another 10, 12 minutes, so
And,
go ahead and tell me, in case you have to work that day.
Okay, I mean, Dahlman, he was, very German. He wouldn't say hurry up. He'd say, mach schnell. Mach schnell, just come on. And boy, his services, when had 3 good-sized services, he had to get people out and in. And we would be parking, as far as 15th Street by that gas station. And on, the church is on 14th Avenue. They'd be parking on 13th. And I don't think we had the parking lot across the street from the church then yet or not. But I mean, but no, Dahlman, 45 minutes. There were no announcements or anything. He said, you can read about that. Because he had to get people out of there in time for the next service. 8, 9:30, and 11. And the 8 o'clock service had quite a few people. And one year they tried having a summer service for the golfers and fishermen and whomsoever. But that didn't work, because those same people that came to that, they were there on Sunday too, you know. So we didn't recruit many then. That was Pastor Raymond's time. Raymond was there sort of as a healer.
He was before Dolman, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was there through the 60s. I think Eric Gustafson had come there till he left in 58. Then there was some seminary professors, one or two. And then Pastor Raymond came from Galesburg, Marvin Raymond. And he was good for its time. He wasn't highly inspiring, but he was very steadying. Because Eric Gustafson left, he had been on Long Island, New York, and he just didn't set well with the people of Trinity. I think he was there maybe 3 years, 4 years possibly. And but then Raymond came. Well, anybody that follows a man who'd been at a church for 43 years,
Oh, sure.
not going to have it easy.
Right.
You know, it's just not going to be easy. And so Pastor Raymond there, I guess from about 62 to 73, somewhere in there, he was there, and he kept the church nice, strong, and steady. And
What do you remember about all the various mergers? Because you've lived through all these
Mergers?
the mergers that we've had.
yeah, well, I've never.
Have you been,
You know, they were needed. We were the old Swedish Lutherans, you know, you know, the tight-lipped Swedish Lutheran. When it became part of the, well, what was the first merger after the Augustana Lutheran Church?
Augustana merged, the next one was LCA.
Yeah, Lutheran Church of America. And then, I don't know, it broadened out. What they had heard, Dahlman, or no, before Dahlman, it was Gustafson. He got the blame for everything. That's when they cut out the church divisions, the circles and units or so.
Oh, so there was a problem with that. Did they mess up the times? And they took all the members and they jumbled them all up? And they
Yes,
changed
right.
the
You're
times?
right.
Because that's what happened at first in Rock Island.
Oh,
All the
okay.
people were mad about that.
I mean, yeah, these old long tradition people who always sat next to, you know, Emma Weigandt always sat with Bessie Klingebill, we'll just say. I mean, they were just close friends, and then they jumbled them around, and but then, like I say, Raymond was kind of a healer in a lot of ways. But I don't know. Okay, about that time, when Gustafson came, we got the new hymnal too, the red one. That was the red book, and he virtually got the blame for that too. I mean, anything he did, it was. We were fine till he came, but yet not as bad as with LaCroix though. But I merged into each of these, you know, pretty well. It never bothered me, and you know, I just stayed in the choir. Well, as September came along, well, in September you go back to choir. You know, pretty soon I was in there 60 years. You know, and
Wow.
but then the Green Book, Lutheran Book of Worship, was that?
Oh, the LBW, yeah.
That was pretty good. There was, I didn't know it, but there was different, not hymn arrangements, but this is the chording and so on was a little bit different. But I think with that one it went well with people, and that was in Nancy Johnson's time. You knew Nancy from Washington School?
Well, I knew her from Trinity.
Trinity,
Met her
okay,
first
from
at
Trinity, okay. But anyhow, you know, the choir we just kept going, and the only bad time was, roughly from 58 to about 62, I would say, when we had all those different directors, 4 different directors.
And how do you like the Cranberry Book compared to the others?
I like it, except the pages are so thin.
Oh.
You can hardly, you know, turn them.
No.
But no, I'm very flexible. I mean, you know, Regina Frixell, who was, you know, this is part of where she and Friedhoff lived when they were first married. She would have everything, you know, just like chorales. I mean, Regina was very...
Oh, she was the organist too? There?
No, she was not the organist there, no, but she wrote a lot of the liturgy for the Red Book.
Right.
She wrote a lot of that liturgy, and some people thought she put the Lutheran Church back 50 years or something, but no, Regina and Friedrich were good friends of mine, and all the Hope Frixell family, and some of them still are. I stay in touch with Tom Frixell, who was a grandson of Friedrich.
Well, so were Frixell's members of Trinity?
No, they were all St. John's people.
St. John was the Augie, most of the Augie professors went
Yeah,
to St. John.
yeah, the Augie professors went to St. John's.
Most of them. Some went to First. Some,
Yeah,
I know
and
some came
Trinity,
over
we
here.
had, the president of Augustana, Sorensen, at that time was a member of Trinity. Dr. Selms was a member of Trinity, and, there were a few others. But when Dr. Sorensen, who was president of Augustana, joined Trinity, that was a real coup.
Who was the first president to come
Yeah.
to Trinity? Well, now we've got Steve Gauls and Jim.
Yeah, right,
of
we've
course.
got that now. So, but, and then Dr. Selms, Tilburg was instrumental in bringing, did you ever know Dr. Selms? Was he there at Augie?
I had him.
Okay, I had him for about 12 credit hours, I think.
No, my one philosophy course.
Yeah, I had him for, believe it or not, psychology and ethics. Then my modern philosophy was Dr. Arbaugh. But anyhow, Tilburg was the one who brought the Selms family over here from Latvia.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, he was completely instrumental in bringing that family over here. Oh, and Dr. Selms was so precious. Oh, how do you do? How do you do? Just such a precious man. His wife never survived the trauma of leaving Latvia and everything.
Oh, really?
She became very, very introverted and old country-ish and just... But anyhow...
She probably didn't learn the language either, I bet.
I don't think so.
Yeah, because he had a really strong accent. I don't think he spoke English too much.
Well, Selms spoke about... He taught in 4 or 5 languages. Spanish, French, Russian, English.
He taught philosophy in English, but it was pretty broken English.
Oh, yeah.
I got about 4 more minutes.
Okay,
So
well, let's
wrap
see.
it up.
What is
was
very,
that,
very interesting. The Tilburg legacy we've talked about. My dad remembered the first pastor real well. He was very strict. I mean, if anybody brought a...
Who was the first pastor?
Miller.
That's right.
Dr. Miller. I remember my dad remember somebody brought a Sunday newspaper to the church and laid it on the radio register or something out in the front hall. And he got scolded for that, that he just wasn't done. But he was only there 2 years, but he remained a friend of Trinity's. He would come back sometimes and preach, and he spent his retirement years in Fort Myers, Florida. And then, like I say, my grandfather, Theodore Weigandt, became close friend of the Tilburgs, and I know people felt comfortable with Tilburg all those 43 years. He was just kind of, in some ways, just kind of folksy. He just and so that's why people liked him.
It would really be hard, though, after 43 years with one pastor, for that pastor to leave, for anybody to follow him. They didn't think about it in those days.
And that's what happened to Eric Gustafson. He was the one. And he had a lot of, he'd been in Long Island, New York, and other places that, just different ideologies. And, Tilly, he was a good friend of mine, too. And he was funny. They came in our stores, and he'd say, Bertha was talking a little too much. He'd say, "Come on, Bert, shake a leg." Get going, in other words. And that was part of his charm. And then, like I say, then Raymond was there 10 years, and Dahlman was there 13 years. And so why didn't I know you when you first came here?
I wasn't in the choir.
No.
That's probably why.
Uh-huh. But, the music has changed, like I say, the formal processionals, and, the robes, and the...
You didn't process except for maybe special occasions.
Yeah,
I
right,
think.
festivals, Sundays. And then they would have almost production numbers, in the late 40s into the 50s when Fred Swanson was there, bring some of the boys' choir members and the violin, and Fred Swanson's wife played the violin, and they were regular, just, Guno's Sanctus, Holy, holy, holy Lord God, and But for that matter, Steve Steele did Messiah numbers, and we were even able to do the Hallelujah chorus and other numbers.
Oh, really?
So, but like I say, my life at Trinity has mainly been music. I mean, I was on the worship and music committee.
Sounds like you did about everything, but
I did. I was on nominating committees, and even some of us were there going through hymns when they changed hymnals to the, I guess, to the green one in the red book. We were given lists of hymns, we thought should be retained, or this or that, and the next thing. And that was kind of fun to do. And then a lot of youth work over the years, Sunday school teaching and youth work. And, big youth conventions, I went to. Colorado Springs, we went by bus. All the Lutheran churches around here.
I went to one of those with Luther League once, and I made a very bad faux pas. I spelled Lutheran wrong. I wasn't Lutheran. I spelled it wrong.
What did you say, Lutheran?
I left out the ERN on the end of it. I was so embarrassed.
Oh, yeah. We went to Colorado Springs in 51, 2 bus loads, and 53 to Boston. Very, very high points.
Well, this place was in Chicago someplace.
Yeah, and...
Well, I'm going to turn it off, I think.
Yeah.
You said really a lot.